So now I'm going to invite our second speaker for today, Ayaan Siddiqui. Ayaan, as he describes himself, Ayaan is a pioneering animal welfare advocate, educator, and legal researcher um, with a high impact driven work across India. He is fellow with several, or he has been a fellow, and he will be going to be a fellow with several organizations and very important project across India. Um, Ayaan is building a path. What I can say about Ayaan is that he's building a path on which human and animal can walk together with compassion, social equality, which is the main work of Ayaan to build awareness, consciousness, and legal framework in which animals are naturally, not just compassionately, but naturally protected. So for today, Ayaan will be talking on concomitance between crime against animal and social deviance.
Yes. So I'll share my screen and do let me know if you're able to see that. Is it visible? All right.
Yes, it
Is
is. Yeah.
it is also full screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. So from my end, good evening, and from the end of the other half of the world, good morning. Respected to the faculty, distinguished participants, and colleagues. I wish to bring, I wish to begin with a line attributed to Mahatma Gandhi. He once said that the greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated. The reason I'm quoting this is because it is often invoked in moral and ethical discussion, such as today. I want to situate it somewhere else within criminology, policing, and public safety. The key argument which I wish to present is simple but consequential. Animal cruelty in India is not an isolated welfare issue, but it is a measurable predictive marker of social deviance and violence. This presentation is based on my finalized mixed method national study conducted under the Law Enforcement and Policing Fellowship, examining whether crime against animals and can function as an early warning indicator for a wider criminal behavior, particularly in the context of India's development vision, message for Viksit Bharat 2047. Now, let's understand why this question matters. This question not only just matters for policing criminology governance, but because also across jurisdiction, both internationally and within India, we see repetitively troubling patterns. Serious violence against humans is often preceded or by or co-occurs with or embedded within cruelty towards animals. In India, however, it is typically treated as a nuisance, minor welfare issue, or an enforcement inconvenience. It is not treated as intelligence. As a result, early behavioral warning signs are ignored, data remains invisible, and intervention occurs after harm escalates, often when human victims are already involved, which also happened in the case of Jisha, a law student from Kerala who was brutally raped and murdered. Before that person also raped a cow and a goat, which he filmed and made it viral on WhatsApp. This study asks if what if animal cruelty were taken seriously, not sentimentally, but strategically as a public safety signal. To address this, I started with four key research questions, which was one, does cruelty against animals, statistically correlate with broader patterns of crime and social deviance within India? Second, how do enforcement practices, legal frameworks, and socio-demographic factors affect the incidence and reporting of animal cruelty? Third, what psychological, institutional, and socio-cultural mechanisms link violence against animals and violence against humans? Fourth and the last, how must Indian policing system be redesigned to operationalize this relationship for preventive governance? So this us then dwells into the methodological part of this research, which has adopted a mixed method design necessitated by a structural gap. Animal cruelty offences are not included as a distinct category in the NCRB data. NCRB is an institution under the Ministry of Home Affairs which has been laid upon the duty to collect crimes that are happening across India and provide a statistical uh, report to it. But as of now, it does not collect crime against animals as a distinct category, even though Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act is the central legislation, and Section 11 of that Act, particularly Section 11(1)(l), marks as a cognizable offence, which thereby says that an FIR must be registered. Yet this is missing. So we included two types of I would say methodology. One was competitive component, qualitative component, and the other was quantitative component. To collect data from the quantitative component, to address this, I have filed RTI's application to state crime record bureaus and district crime record bureaus across the country. The final data set had 318 district, 17 states and union territories, of which the data was asked for 2020 and 2024. All crime variables were standardized as per population of the states which I've collected data of. So after this, I constructed a concomitant crime index capturing co-occurring violent and property offences and estimated linear regression model controlling for urbanization and literacy. Qualitative component, to complement this, I conducted 16 semi-structured expert interviews which were included in the category of police officer, criminologists, psychologists, veterinarians, policymakers, animal protection practitioners, and social workers. The goal was to understand mechanisms that raw crime data cannot capture. So what does all of that led to? It led to the quantitative finding, which was the results were clear and statistically robust. Key results were showing that animal cruelty is a statistically significant positive predictor of concomitant rate. The coefficient was 0.130 and the value of p was greater than 0.05. In simple terms, we can say that district reporting higher incidents of cruelty also exhibit higher levels of broader animal crime activity or in general crime activity. Even after controlling for urbanization and literacy, this relationship remains significant. Urbanization itself is a significant, likely reflecting density, stress, and reporting capacity. Literacy, however, shows no statistically significant protective effect. This model explains approximately 32% of variation, which is substantial given the cross-sectional nature of the data and acknowledged underreporting. For the spatial analysis, we also did a Venn diagram and a district heat map. The Venn diagram itself is presentable here. The district heat map basically represented all of the states and district through which we got the data, and it also represented the intensity of crimes that were happening, which then leads us to the thematic analysis, which is the quantitative finding. So after we did the interview of the 16 experts, we were able to figure out 4 distinct themes. Number one was psychological roots, shared psychological roots, violence continuum, institutional failures, and cultural contradiction. So what you see here is different colors, and each color basically represents how they are being, they are some sort of correlating or are in a similar way. As in, for example, I did an interview of a person of A, then I did an interview of the person B. I asked interview A and interview B same 10 questions, and after interview and interview B came into some sort of conclusion. That conclusion is represented by the color. So the darker the color, the more the, I would say, the distinct, the brighter the color, that means that they all of the interviews shared the same thought and the same answer to the question, and which led to, like I said, to understanding that number one, there is empathy deficit, impulsivity, emotional detachment, and need for power control under the theme shared psychological roots. Second, violence as a continuum. Crucially, experts rejected a simplistic graduation theory. Instead, they described co-occurrence. Animal cruelty may appear before, alongside, or after violence against humans. It functions as a visible red flag, often the earliest detectable one within households and communities experiencing broader dysfunction. So there's one peculiar example which I would like to cite, that in 2021 I was reported a case where a man was beating his dog It was his pet dog. When the investigation officer was assigned this case, we went to the person's place. We got to know that this person was also abusing his child and his wife. And so as to control his child and his wife, he was using that pet dog to emotionally play that woman and the child. So this is something that it is observed, particularly within the households which are associated with domestic violence. The third is institutional failure. Here's the system breakdown because the system and the institutions are not working as they're supposed to be. Experts pointed out absence of animal cruelty data in the crime systems. Because of no data, no policy could be created in a way that it really reaches out to animals and it really brings the welfare of those animals. If the data is not there, nothing can really come out tangible in its policy form. Negligible penalties under the PC Act. So the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, as of now, only fines 50 rupees per a person if he is fined by the magistrate that he has done cruelty. Non-functional of district SPCAs. SPCAs are those societies which are established by the law under the SPCA Act of 2001, but as of now, none of the SPCAs are working and they are defunct. Lack of coordination between police, veterinary service, and social welfare agencies. And the last is cultural contradiction. Finally, a deep contradiction emerged that India simultaneously reveres animals symbolically while normalizing large scale cruelty. This cognitive dissonance desensitizes society and undermines enforcement, particularly where animal cruelty is industrial, invisible, and culturally rationalized. So there were certain limitations which were number one, that the data that we received from the state crime record bureaus and the district crime record bureaus were not given under the same performa, and they were scattered all across. Plus, the data that we received was not standardized. Somebody was giving some else the data, somebody was giving other data. For example, if we were asking the State Crime Record Bureau to give the data from 2020 to 2024, few states were giving data of 2025 as well, which was irrelevant. And few of the states also rejected the RTI, even though they cannot by law. And there was ambiguity in data presentation because the data was so scattered. Temporal inconsistencies with non-compliance of Section 11. There were few of the FIRs that we received were not complying with the Section 11 as they were supposed to be, and there were other systematic issues as well. So the summary or the integration of findings gives us that when we integrate the quantitative and qualitative finding, a coherent picture emerges. Animal cruelty is systematically linked to broader deviance. The relationship is likely stronger than recorded due to underreporting, institutional invisibility, lack of it is not because of lack of evidence. Is the as they say is the primary barrier, but it is not. In other words, we are not failing due to ignorance, we are failing due to design. It's the design that is faulty, and it is not being addressed towards the animals, because it is logical that the animals cannot vote for themselves, or even cannot even say. So that therefore whosoever builds the design is influenced or is lobbied by individuals which do not want animals to get their fair justice, belonging, and compassion. So now that leads to the how would the I would say Indian policing system or the system would look like if we can do something about it. So prevention is absolutely possible if we only count animal cruelty as a part of it. So the next steps for policy direction could be number one, NCRB integration. NCRB can start to integrate crime against animals as a distinct category under the Crime in India report. Second, police sensitization. The police and the particularly the deputy sub-inspector and the Thana inspector must be given the knowledge to understand that there is a link between crime against animals and social deviance. If a person is beating their wife, he might already be abusing an animal in his household. Second, veterinary cross reporting. So there's an act in India called the POXO Act, which basically dwells into the situation where a child has been abused. So if a child is reported, if a child goes to a pediatrician and the child basically expresses what he has been gone through, and if the child has been abused as it is perceived by the pediatrician, the pediatrician can directly inform the law enforcement, and the law enforcement can directly take action. So the same mechanism can be applied into veterinary cross reporting as well, because veterinarians are the first responders when an animal is abused, because they would be the first person to actually treat the animal, and they would be able to figure out if that kind of violence or that kind of injury or bruise is naturally has occurred, or it has been occurred due to some sort of human intervention or human violence. So then the veterinarian can directly report to the law enforcement that this animal has been abused and it must be dealt accordingly. The last would be to align ourselves, or I would say synchronize ourselves with the law enforcement and other agencies. So there's, like I mentioned, there's a body called Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, which has been established by the law in 2001. So the main duty of the society is to prevent animal cruelty, and it is chaired by the district magistrate of this district. And there are many other members representing the various departments of a government. And if they are able to coordinate with each other, then I believe that crime against animals can significantly reduce, and so can human violence. So lastly, I would like to conclude with this, that the study demonstrates that animal cruelty is not a peripheral, it is diagnostic. It is one of the few points where prevention is still possible. Ignoring it allows violence to escalate silently across victims, animals, and humans alike. Recognizing it transforms policing from reactive enforcement to anticipatory governance, aligning with the ethical and institutional aspirations of Viksit Bharat 2047. And lastly, it's a choice before us, and it is not sentimental, it's strategic.